What up, Kev? What up?
Man, happy hip hop birthday to you, my friend.
Happy hip hop birthday, man. 50 years.
Yeah.
50 years, man.
Yeah.
That is quite a lot of time.
About 49 of them in the last 2 or 3 years, feels like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. 50 years. I'm trying to think of other genres that count themselves, like count their years of existence. Am I tripping? Or does like no one else do this?
What did you say? Other genres?
Yeah.
Well, see, that's the key here. See, I'm gonna help prevent you from getting yourself in trouble here.
Okay, got you.
Is that it's not just about rap music. See, hip hop is an entire culture, son.
Rap is something you do. Hip hop is something you live. That's right. That is right. That is right. That's true. That's true.
You know what? You know what the headline, the lead story in every piece about Hip Hop 50 has been the predominant strain of thought that seems to have graced every, I don't know, printed word that I've seen in some form or fashion is, why did they leave out so-and-so? That little Mad Lib. Yeah. Why are we like this?
I don't know. And I have a really generic opening question, by the way.
Okay.
But it's just, I don't know. It's gonna happen, and I feel like everybody should just settle down because it's gonna happen, man. Like somebody's gonna. I think shout out to Omega, man. That's my dude. I think he sent me a video of Double X Posse performing. I'm like, they not leaving nobody out if they find a room for Double X Posse to perform. Like everybody's getting their chance here. Like, so I don't know. I feel like it's bound to happen, and it's unfortunate. I'm gonna tell you something, and like I said, I'm gonna ask a very generic question, and I'm gonna answer it before I ask it. So I was going through what my favorite era. Me and my wife were talking about our favorite era of hip hop, right? And at the time, Ain't Gonna Hurt Nobody by Kid and Play was on. So we immediately were like, yeah, maybe it was this era, right? Because it was probably Prisoners of the Moment, right? But I noted that I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I know at least the Far Side and Alcoholics have performed together recently, right? I think was that the same bill?
Might have been last night, yeah.
Yeah, that was okay.
With Souls.
Was Souls okay, got it. Now, irrelevant to what I'm going to say, but it just leads to a question. Are they touring together, all three of them, right now? Or was that just a one-off in Los Angeles?
Just from, seeing Domino's post, shout to Dom and that whole crew, his posts on Facebook that I think, Souls have been doing a serious run.
Yeah.
The 30th anniversary.
50 City show, yeah.
Of I don't know what the anniversary is. I guess it's the first album, I guess, or their career.
Well, no. Well, I guess the first album would technically be, but 93 till it's 2023. So yeah, it's 30 years of their record.
2003, 2003. That would make sense. Yeah.
So I know that they were on there like 50 cities, some crazy amount of cities. For the 30 year, and they do, man. Hyro wins. They do an excellent job of like maintaining, putting out new music, like continuing to keep themselves fresh in the music. In a music industry that wants to forget you as soon as you're out of the front page or front 3 pages, they've remained by creating their own pages. I think that's commendable. But those 3 groups touring together probably, that probably represents the time period, like the time period and most polarizing groups for me. You know what I'm saying? Like when I think about it. Because The Far Side was sort of that moment. Well, it wasn't sort of. De La was one thing, but they were from New York and they were on some hippie stuff. It was dope. It was new to me. I was into it, but it was new. It was 89 or whatever. Like whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Tribe kind of similar. Like, oh, this is a thing that I want to get into. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But nothing truly represented out of LA for me. Dred Scott was close. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But it wasn't until the Far Side dropped that I was like, yo, okay, that's me. I can do that.
Gotcha.
And then Romai, of course, being from Pasadena, right, reading the liner notes and Imani shouting out West Covina, I was like, oh, snap, this is me. And then the Alcoholics were kind of like the second dose of that, right? Mm-hmm. Like they was kind of sports fanatics, at least J-Ro was. Like, and, of course, Souls of Mischief representing that from the Bay Area, like these, I don't know if they were high school kids at the time that the record dropped, but they were high school kids in appearance. Right. So it's like all of this with Good Life going on and ultimately Project Blow just kind of was the entrance for me personally.
Mm-hmm. Don't forget Double X Posse.
Double X Posse. I'm not going to be able to do it. Right? So that kind of, I have to say, and I hate saying it because I know that like 93 is this, 93, 94, the midnight. I suppose it's like the golden, but I don't feel like that way. I just feel like that was the time and the age where I was so connected and it started to represent me as an individual a lot more than the early 90s and et cetera. That being said, I don't know how to frame this question. I'm just going to say, what era, like when you think about your connection, like not just listening to it or whatever. I mean, that could be what your connection to hip hop. What era, what year, what group, what song, whatever comes to mind?
Oh, I mean, my answer is probably about the same as yours, but I don't know because I sat down. I enjoyed seeing everybody posting stories about their journey, through hip hop. And I didn't intend to participate in that way. I didn't intend to participate in any kind of way, really, just listen to some music or whatever. And I didn't know that concert was happening at Yankee Stadium, right?
Right. Yeah. We can talk about that.
But and I'm going to answer your question by telling a much longer story than is necessary.
Nah, this is what it is. 50th anniversary, man. We're supposed to tell our stories.
Friday, I was happy for it to be Friday. So I think I was tired and, I had a couple drinks and then I realized that, this thing's coming on, I see like my man Dan Charnas posts that he's at the show. I was like, oh, that's dope. Then I think Fizz posted a link to it or something like that, or either that or I found it and I'm thinking like, am I going to spend 2 hours watching something that is the wrong, like some, like the side stage thing. So I was like, let me make sure. And I think I even checked in with you guys. Is this the right one?
Yeah.
Right. But as I started watching, I was like, okay, well, this better be the right one. But anyway, it's at Yankee Stadium. It's like, it's New York. Yeah, I'll check this out. Mm-hmm. So a couple drinks turns into maybe 3 drinks, right? And then the thing keeps going. The thing was 8 hours long, as it turns out. So I'm just kind of like sitting there in front of the keyboard and I'm just not really writing anything, just listing out all the memories that I have through the years, sort of chronologically. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I probably, by the way, did shout out T-Ray, who produced Not Gonna Be Able to Do It. But
oh, wow.
I think probably, yeah. I think probably those still were, though, the years. I think 93 to 96. I don't know. What's that? Somebody posted something a few years ago that resonated with me in every way except for the actual year. I think it might have actually been 96. Because when did 36 Chambers come out?
93.
Okay, so it was 93 then.
Yeah.
So 93 was that year that all those records came out, like just a disproportionately huge. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That sounds
Right.
Okay.
Let me see. Let me make sure that I'm right about this. I'm almost sure.
Yeah, I think you're right because that timing would have been.
I thought it was like end of the year, like fall winter of '93. If I'm
yeah, I remember getting when I got
November
Midnight Marauders.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are the two records I got at the same time. Yeah.
So yeah, I was already in. You know what I mean? I was already like, that's all I was listening to for the most part. That and like smooth jazz, like some Kenny G.
Just listening to the Wave, yeah. The Wave is a total different station.
The Wave. Oh, it's heavy metal.
It didn't go that far, but it's
that'd be dope.
You turn that joint on, and you're a strong woman trying to just make it through.
Well, yeah, no, but I don't think that's not necessarily me in particular. I feel like all of us, it was just like, wow, this is unstoppable. You know what I mean? Like that was the year where it was like, there was always this like, people did not like rap. So, other people didn't like it and thought it was a fad or thought it was going to go away or whatever. And I didn't know. I was enjoying it because I was like, what if it does go away? I mean, let me enjoy it while I can. When that wave came through of music in that particular short period of time, it became clear, oh, this is not going anywhere.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there.
And I think, unfortunately, also though now old head energy is like holding on to that, thinking it wasn't supposed to go anywhere else when everything evolves and changes, so
everything evolves. And changes. Yeah. So this is the thing. I say 93 and it makes a lot of sense, right? Because I have to, because the Far Side Bizarre Ride came out in 92.
Okay.
Right. But it was late 92. And you know what else dropped in late 92? The Chronic.
Okay.
So it was like.
And when was Death Certificate?
That point. 91.
Okay.
And I'm excluding Death Certificate, although it still is my favorite album. Bizarre Ride is right there on top of it, right? But Death Certificate's pretty much a pivotal record for me. But from like late 92 through to 96, it just was like lights out. Everything seemed to be better than that. Even stuff that we would now not really discuss, like Double X Posse or Yak Fu Front, like everything seemed to be hitting. You know what I mean? Like groups that we just, of course, I'm not saying they're whack or anything like that. I'm just saying groups that don't come to top of mind when we're discussing, like Cellar Dwellers and Artifacts, rest in peace, Tame One, and
that's another T-Ray joint. Wrong side.
Oh, that's right. Now that I knew. And then my wife had mentioned like just like the crews like Def Squad and Hit Squad and like all this that was happening at the same time.
And now you say Def Squad is also, it's like that. And then that's the reason why it's hard for me to answer the question, because then you had the EPMD records and the, you know what I mean? Like before Public Enemy, of course, and, like the earliest, and then NWA, that whole, when they first came out, preceded all the the early K-Day, like when I was still in high school, junior high school. Like, so that's a whole stretch of time before that 92, 93 period. So.
But I often think, and I don't know, like, and I'm wrong about this, but I think about it. I wonder if rap would have been better. Because in the 80s, rap was just rap. There wasn't any defined genres. There wasn't really gangsta. I know Ice-T talks about how the media defined gangster rap. Like before, he had been calling it reality rap, and people had been calling it that or whatever. But he said he didn't call it that. He said he never felt like that moniker could be true because it was his reality, not everybody else's. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just going off a recent interview. I think it was on Drink Champs, but I just remember that rap was rap. EPMD dropped, and Big Daddy Kane and Ice-T, and I can even go as far as like L.A. Breeze. You know what I'm saying? Like just Breeze LA, like all of those crews, like there wasn't any particular way to be a rap, like all the way. And then you start dividing into genres, right? You got your gangster rap and your, I don't know, hippie rap and all the little things that started to break off. Like I'm not sure which genres were called which. And then you had like, you think about House Party and that's what I think 91 era as well. If I'm not mistaken, and all of the movies and kind of hip hop themed at the very least, not even indirectly, not as direct as like Who's the Man, right? With like all of the artists in it, but there was everything sort of became hip hop themed, and I miss that. I miss like when I think about 93 and I think about 96, 92, etc. The only thing I remember also was like the division that started to happen. You know what I mean? And that wasn't prominent, at least in Los Angeles in the 80s, because it was new to us. Like there, you know what I'm saying? We were discovering our style. Mix masters were killing it. KD mix masters were doing their thing, and the Rhodium and I don't know why Skate Junction is. I'm thinking the wrong thing, but you know what I'm saying. Skating rinks or whatever was rocking. Like the era was simply just like you wanted to be around rap music and hip hop. People were breakdancing on cardboard on the sidewalk in the suburbs. You know what I'm saying? City and suburbs. I could distinctly remember on 110th and Barrington Cross, like me, my man Brian, well, my neighbor Brian, I don't know, I can't say my man, I ain't seen Brian since I was 11, but me, Brian, this dude named Aaron, like getting all the cardboard we could together and breakdancing on the corner, and some kids from 112th came over and we was all breakdancing, like b-boying together. Like the energy was outside, and I still miss that. Like I miss the energy being outside. I can't imagine what it would be like now. Sorry for the long-winded, thing, but I can't imagine what it'd be like now for me to walk up on some kids having a cypher in the mall. Like now, I would be hyped because the energy would be outside. And I talked about it on the show before. Like that's the thing I miss. If I could take anything away and say, I'm not knocking what kids are doing now, etc., but I just miss that it was outside. It was happening in front of people. You know what I'm saying? But it's all good. By
the way, it's okay to miss things too. You miss people who aren't around anymore. You miss family members who you lost. And it was a special period of time. Hopefully everyone can have a period of time culturally in their life that is special enough, that one day maybe it's not quite the same and you miss it a little bit, Doesn't mean you have to criticize the new stuff or whatever, or the offshoots and the offspring of those forebears of the culture. But yeah, I mean, I miss it, but it didn't go anywhere. I could still get to it. Like over the week, we talk about the mix masters, right? And I'm kind of upset that I didn't push you harder to go.
There was no way I could have gone.
Yeah, I know.
I would have rather have been there. I enjoyed myself with my neighbors for sure, but I definitely would have rather been there.
And that's the one thing that LA did have, and of course I'd never experienced WBLS or any of that early Mr. Magic and all those. I only heard that through records. So by the time they were putting out records, my assumption was that they were already huge stars in New York, but none of the nightlife stuff in New York or any other city. But with LA having K-Day, I always felt like that was something special that we had, because K-Day wasn't just playing NWA. It was, I mean, first of all, it was Dr. Dre and Lace and Makeup with the Wrecking Crew, you know. It was more of a dance thing almost to me, like a, you know, like electro funk, kind of like
Arabian Prince and all that.
Yeah, exactly, you know. So there was a difference. That whole thing went through an evolution, but K-Day was playing, to the best of my recollection, everything. I think there was some freestyle music in there, wasn't there? Like Debbie Deb and things like that. And,
all
you
of
know,
that.
and you had rap from New York to LA and everywhere in between. You had Uncle Luke when they started coming up, you know, so it was very diverse. And it's funny because I can remember that, but until Battle Cat was on those turntables, I was like, yes. Because he's such a mellow dude, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't get up there and, you know, he's a DJ, he's a personality, but man, he was just rocking. And I was like, he went from How to Survive in South Central to you know, Tribe Called Quest. I was like, wow, dude. So it was really dope.
Yeah, like,
yeah.
And you mentioned that, like, EPMD.
Yeah.
I remember, you know, the first time I heard EPMD was on KDAY. Like, first time I heard a lot of stuff.
Right.
But I remember Murder Rap by Above the Law. They used to play that on KDAY a lot. And it used to bug me. It was like, oh my God, like, this is the craziest joint I've ever. Every time they played it, the radio would go up like 30 notches. I had to bump it. It was people. And if you're not from, and there's a Don Will back in the day. Shout out to the world famous Tanya Morgan. Big up to Von P and Don Will. When I first met Don Will online, he had talked about the dangers of regionless rap, like rap that didn't really represent where it was from. It sort of started to blend into the same sound. Now, I think that's the thing about the 90s. Because I was old enough to go to different places. So I went to Texas. I went to New York. Like, and there were these other crews. Like Capone and Noriega wasn't really a thing yet when I first heard them. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, oh, all right. There's other stuff that I haven't heard. Because my mind was like, yo, we hear everything.
Right.
Then I realized people had never heard Above the Law, had never heard Murder Rap. So,
okay.
You know, my brother and I were playing that for people in Texas. Like, no.
Oh, wow.
Above the Law was crazy. So there was this sort of, I feel like the 90s, the movement started happening. I'm talking physical movement. People started getting around with these tapes and the sound. And you started to hear all of this cross-collaborative stuff. Odd Squad, right? Like a lot of people wouldn't. I bought the Odd Squad tape in Dallas, if I'm not mistaken. Suge could correct me on that, but we loved the Odd Squad. Like, we was like, oh, that joint is fresh, and almost everything was fresh for some odd reason during that era. So I understand why people call it the golden era, but I also think it was the age. Like, hip hop had gotten to this kind of peak maturity where all the age ranges kind of meshed, right?
Right.
And we were all able to be in the same places. So that energy was like perfect. You know what I mean?
And it was coming. It was,
So,
you still had to seek it out, but you could access it, but it didn't feel saturated. I don't know if that's just me being an old man that the market feels saturated now. I think there is a lot more music being released and infinitely more accessible, like I've talked about plenty of times. But yeah, like that, it was the perfect amount of music coming out to inspire people who were yet to record their first song to understand what the standard was in the bar, where the bar had been set. Just like you're not going to go and practice high jump and jump under the bar thinking that's the game, right? You know that you need to get over.
Right.
You need to get over
You
that,
have to get over the bar.
Go above it. But yeah, I mean, all those records, like every record you mentioned, I mean, you mentioned Ice-T, and I just think of just sitting in the car because 6 a.m. is still going.
6 a.m.
I could get out of the car. I'm where I need to go, but 6 a.m. is still going. So I got to pretty much sit here, hold my hand up in the air with the antenna and make sure that I'm getting K-Day until, the end of the record. Murder Rap was unreal. Like it was such a weird record, right?
Yeah.
Just that, which I didn't know was, Quincy Jones at the time. I was just like, it's just that sound, like, oh my God. And then Hutch and them were just so dope at what they did. You talked about Breeze. I mean, shoot, that record got hit so hard on K-Day.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite, probably MCs of all time, when Funky Enough came out, it was like,
oh man,
come on, man.
When the DLC dropped, yeah, dude, we could do a whole, like, we could get a round table of people together and like, yo, we gonna do like a
so yeah, you could.
Episode, but
so I didn't look at any of the lists or anything like that. I took it from the post that there were lists that nobody agreed with altogether, but I have my list, and I know the thing about us is that we know that we can argue about the list and all that stuff, but we know that when we get around people who know what they're talking about, like we think we know what we're talking about because we do. Mm-hmm. Even if we don't agree on the list, we can look at each other and say, okay, well, at least that person knows what they're talking about. I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So. Yeah, you would totally understand it. Like, you would totally understand, like, I may not put said group, again, region. There was a definitive rap started, and we're talking hip hop, but we really have strictly been talking rap in this case.
Yeah.
Rap had started to have I don't know, man, a something for everyone type feel. Like your personality could, these things could match your personality, and where I could appreciate that as well. So it's an endless conversation, and that's just talking about rap. That's without talking about the Invisible Scratch Pickles and Executioners and the 92 DJ era. All of the LA crews that were out, that, again, we just had Cerritos All-Stars and Snapback. Like, I don't think a lot of people really know how important Cerritos All-Stars has been to LA DJ culture. I mean, they were streaming before streaming was a thing. They had an online radio show before anybody else was doing that. You know what I mean? So, there are all these little, you know what I'm saying? Icy Ice and them at Glam Slam, like all of these little, 21XL and Events Company and all of them. Like, now, forgive me because I know there's a crew I'm forgetting, like their entire crew I'm forgetting, but just knowing that there's a whole other side of this. Like, we could talk about rap all day. Then we could just start breaking down b-boying and then graph writing. And if you got a person that was super into graph, they will be able to tell you how these eras affected them and the marquee names and not so marquee names that had an effect on them. So as a culture, I mean, hip hop was it was influencing quite a bit of our lives, visually, audibly, etc.
I remember going to amusement parks to see cats battle. Then there was nothing set up. And then I remember when there was, I forget who it was. I mean, it had to have been a couple of the local crews battled at, or it might have been a few at Knott's Berry Farm, and it was on TV. It was the most unbelievable thing ever. I was just like, but yeah, it was just everywhere you turn, there was something you could discover and get deeper into and enjoy. Like, it wasn't like it was an effort to have to discover it. I'll be honest with you. I'm older than you, but I'm not that much older than you. And I was young enough to where a lot of the East Coast, more underground stuff, like not the Yo MTV Raps, like every hour on the hour groups, they were playing on Yo MTV Raps, with some of those, like you talked about Capone and Noriega. Like, the first time I heard about the Intelligent Hoodlum was, I think, when Will Smith said Intelligent Hoodlum was his favorite rapper as the Fresh Prince on the TV show. Yeah. And I was like, like, that's a real dude. Like, he's really talking about a real dude, right? But I tell you who I learned a lot of appreciation for a lot of MCs or a lot of groups that I didn't particularly listen to all the time was from Bobby Jimmy.
Yeah.
Making fun of all these guys. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I remember Bobby Jimmy was hilarious. Roaches, hair weave. Man, hold up. Let's get to the other side. I know we have topics set, but I kind of feel like
we could
the
table
50th anniversary episode of Rap Sucks Radio should be a thing. So we might get to the topics. We might save those exact same topics for next week because I want to continue to go down this path. So check it out. We're going to get to the other side real quick. Kev, are you ready?
I've been ready for 50 years, man.
And plus 30 minutes. All right, let's go.
Rap Sucks Radio. Blah, 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 blah.
What up, y'all? You alive on Rap Sucks Radio with your homeboy Track Life and your fam, Kev Sakota.
Roaches!
Look at all these roaches around me every day. He's wilding, yo. He was super wilding.
By the way,
thank y'all
real
for tuning
quick,
in. We appreciate.
Shout to King News.
Shout
Best radio newsman
Word up.
in the history of the game.
Ever. Yo, thank y'all for tuning in, man. We appreciate each and every one of y'all. If you would like to catch past episodes of our show, you can go to rapsucksradio.com or any of your favorite podcasting platforms. And if you would like to catch us on television, go to BTSN, man, Behind the Scenes Network. Download the app or channel on your Roku or any of your Amazon Fire devices. We are right there. You can also go to btsn.watch online. We're there with plenty of other dope content. BTSN, Behind the Scenes Network. We want in. And I do have to say this. You catch us on social media at Rap Sucks Radio. You can also catch us, RSR Podcast on Facebook. And just a quick shout out. I do MC at a club called Snapback. Go to Snapback_live. Old school hip hop and R&B and all things that were played during that time period. So come check us out. All right. If you're, I don't know about saying just tuning in. We're not live, so I was going to say if you're just tuning in, that's ridiculous. But what we've been discussing, we're going to continue with the discussion. Inspired, where we'll move the topics to next week. Is just 50 years of hip hop, roughly. Impact, how the music was received initially, etc. So that's what I'll jump into now, Kev. Now, I am old enough to remember when hip-hop was not received well by people my age.
Sure.
Like, I remember it being like, now it just seems like every young person has some form of connection to hip-hop. You have your counterculture people, whatever, but... And I also spent, a fair amount of time in South Central, which is one group of people not into the music. You got your older... Black Americans who were like, what? This is cursing and bad. Then I moved to the suburbs and it was a whole different set of people that were not into hip hop for different reasons, right? Mm-hmm. What do you remember about that? Like, do you remember like the subtle change? Friends that you, when you were younger were like, oh, I don't like that music, that you look at now and they got like a hip hop history, like just like you do?
Pretty much everybody. But it wasn't, I don't feel like it was like a big deal. Like, I feel like there were definitely adults, like you see Dolores Tuckers and some sort of religious, more religious folks. And I was like, all right, I don't like that, but I kind of get it. Like, but it, there were always the small, it felt special. Kind of, that's part of what made it feel special. You know what I mean? Just like it's the same thing I would imagine with kids who grew up in that 70s punk scene, in New York, right? We talked, I talked about metalheads, the 80s. So it's something that, music is something and that binds you. But then on top of that, the fact that it was not just the music, that the music was sort of the broadcast mechanism for these other things that were, you had to be in a place to see the train car, the freight car that got hit up, and appreciate that. Or to have, there was no internet. You had to have someone who had pictures of something that they did that was showing you the work, right? But it was a very tighter community, the graffiti community. And then breaking. Not like you were going to go and like pull out the cardboard and then get ready to, get your windbreaker on and put on like John Denver. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, well, Rhinestone Cowboy or something. No, you're going to put on some hip hop.
Yeah. It was interesting to see for that brief time period, like breaking b-boying replace riding bikes outside for kids. Just for a brief moment, like you went outside and that was part of you, you threw Transformers at each other or whatever, but you would also, then somebody would figure out a way to hurt themselves.
That's what I was just going to ask you. What's the worst injury you ever took? Breaking.
Rest in peace, Cam J. He got into suicides.
What's that? No hand
front flip and
okay.
land on your back or whatever. So I remember trying to like practice in the garage with him, and I still can't do like a front flip or any type of flip to save my life, but I could definitely accomplish a suicide because that was basically not accomplishing a full front flip. And I remember doing that on my garage floor and laying there like, yo, like I thought I killed myself. Yo, like I legit thought like I was getting ready to die. It's like my rib cage, it pushed out my back, straight out my chest. And I think, man, like that's when I was like, yo, rap just seems like a way better path. Like I'm gonna go back inside and write. This dancing don't make no sense. So that would be the worst. I didn't break anything, but at least not that I know of. Something might have broken, healed wrong, but that hurt.
Broke your spirit.
Really
broke
hurt.
Your spirit.
Yeah. Broke my spirit. I definitely didn't want to B-boy no more. And windmill and none of that. But I can also remember, man, 52nd Street Elementary. I don't remember the kid, but I remember. This is one of those etched into my memory moments. Elementary school. I don't know what schools have now, but that like linoleum. No, is it linoleum? Like that plastic looking floor in the cafeteria.
Uh-huh.
The old school. Like, I remember this kid was doing windmills, and I don't know how it happened. Like now that I see people do windmills, I'm like, how the hell? But he like smacked his face on the floor twice. I was like, bap, bap. Like it just, and I'm like, yo. I remember being a kid, like, oh, that had to, and he just like grabbed his ball and crying, like, he was a kid. I was in like 3rd or 4th grade, so I think that also was a deterrent. Like, man, that didn't look fun. I've seen a dude hit a chair trying to do backspins, like spinning in the cafeteria, bust his head on the chair, like legit busted his head open, like God. So I remember that was like that was when I realized like again it was just all these signs like you're gonna be a rapper, don't worry about it. You know what I'm saying? And then I almost busted my head open and was like, all right, see.
Oh yeah. I feel like even people who didn't like rap wanted to try and break.
Oh man, everybody. Yeah, it was the thing to do. I mean, it was in breaking and b-boying, and b-boying particularly. I understand it. We're going to talk about it in this, but we understand the vernacular, right? But it was in like Ernie Reyes Jr. in his movies would like bust out on a break move, like you know what I'm saying, like a windmill or something, just randomly. You know what I mean? Like it was just part of the move. Like they, it was like a fight scene, and then he'd get it right, and then he'd be like, You know what I'm saying? And then like it was just permeating. What's the movie, man? It's like a one of those coming of age sort of white teenage movies. It was like about a witch, right? Remember the dudes rap, "I'm king," and they know it. When I snap my fingers, everybody say, "Show it, I'm hot." You remember that joint?
That was your first record, right?
Man, listen, can't nobody rhyme like that dude. That is the best. I don't care what Eminem does to this day. That is the best white rap I've ever heard in my life.
All right, Melly Mel.
Teen Witch.
Oh, okay. Did not see it.
But it was random because the movie had nothing to do with you see what I'm saying? Like this. Mm-hmm. This was just like, you know how you said earlier that it was sort of like a secret, like,
right? Yeah,
like it's kind of between us. You know,
I was hyped every time.
It was, yeah.
Like I wasn't interested in Flashdance necessarily. Mm-hmm. I wasn't not interested in Flashdance, but I wasn't really interested in Flashdance. But when Rocksteady Crew came on the screen, I was like, oh, okay,
yeah.
You know, for that 10 seconds or whatever it was.
Yeah, they were dropping these little tidbits.
Yeah.
Because there was something there, like enough,
right,
to drop a tidbit to go, yo, we gonna have, right? We're gonna have this. We're gonna have a. I remember the weird. I don't know if it was a commercial or documentary or whatever. They had R2D2 and C3PO like pop locking, right? It was a cartoon or whatever. I'm like, just these little tidbits. The some people say this was the beginning of the end for rap, but the Barney Rubble, Fruity Pebbles rap, like, you know what I'm saying? I don't like to say never before because it was something that I was into. So I can definitely understand that there were other genre styles and music styles of art that wove their way into pop culture in such a casual way that it could be recognized. I would probably, just thinking of eras, I would think like New Wave. New Wave kind of found its way randomly into, I guess, ultimate popularity because it became a popular genre before it faded off into parsed off into different things. But for me, and if you are in our age group, you grew with every step. You weren't ahead of every step. You weren't behind every step. You were kind of at every age group step. In its infancy, you were an infant. In its toddler, in its growth in popularity, you were becoming a teenager. Mm-hmm. In its height of popularity, you were a teenager. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's probably why, if I was to try to psychologically break it down, why it's so important to us. Mm-hmm. But it also is why, going back to my initial question, why I can go back and point at people directly, DJs that was like, ugh, when we were kids, and now I know them and they're DJs. Mm-hmm. But I remember you in fifth grade.
And you didn't like
what I mean?
This music.
And you didn't like it. You was like, oh, who would listen to that? And now you're a DJ.
Right.
I mean, and it's nothing against it, but it was a wave that ultimately took over people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
So, yeah.
Definitely. What do you think kids, like if I ask a kid right now who listens to like, Travis Scott and Migos, and said, what kind of music do you like? What is the answer? It's not hip hop, right? I mean, I'm not saying that they're not hip hop. I'm trying to figure out what the kid would say. Or would they just name a...
They probably would say hip-hop or rap, I would think. Right?
Rap caviar?
Rap caviar. Great. They're also, at least in my experience, and I won't go into the long story, but I had a recent... I wouldn't call it a back and forth, but... someone attempted to argue with me, and I was like, what are we doing right now? But they also kind of feel attacked by the old school. By the old school, like, people want to take it back to the 90s and they want to advance the music or whatever. And I don't know. I kind of wanted to ask him, like, do you honestly believe there's this Machiavellian group of people who are hiding in a dungeon with NPCs trying to, like, we're going to, by the time I'm done with this spell, rap will be back in the night. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, people just making music they enjoy or that they prefer, and you, for some odd reason, are following it, even though you don't like it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't follow ballroom dancing. Like, I don't like it. Like, I'm not going to be like, yo, why are you trying to ballroom dance? I'm just like, whatever, go. I don't need to know what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And some of it, I think, is just having those conversations with people who are not kids. For the most part, I would assume they're probably maybe in their early 20s. But relatively, younger than us, maybe just not ready to have, to experience it yet, just like I think I talked about a while ago, the early records that when sampling was super heavy, like in that early 90s, mid 90s era, once you get past a certain point of getting a knowledge base of who these artists are, you start to recognize the what what CTI the record label means when you see it at the used record store, right? It means I'm gonna buy that even if there's no turntable to listen to it on, even if I've never heard of this artist, because I know that those records are the ones that's the label Bob James was on, or Milt Jackson, or you know what I mean? Like, I know that I'm gonna find something on that record I could sample. Chances are, right?
Yeah.
But now part of me is like, and then so I start thinking, oh, well, maybe I know a little something about jazz, right? But if I talk to an old school jazz person, they can be like, what are you talking about? That's when jazz was falling off. That's when that you know what I mean? Like, they could have the same opinion about me saying that as we have about, cats thinking that hip hop started with, country grammar.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? So
sure.
At some point,
But
then every so often I see a young person, like a legit young early 20s DJ playing just bangers. Banger, banger.
Classic after classic.
Like in a way that it's like, oh, you actually know and appreciate what these songs are. And so I feel seen, right? It's like, well, it has nothing to do with me. It's the music.
But I sort of hate it though, right? Like, I hate, and I'm with it, but I hate it. Like, during the Twitch era, during the pandemic when Twitch was popping, I remember like what bothered me about the time we were doing the Price I Paid, Timeless Music or whatever. And for me, the kings of the court at that time were like, when I look back, was Lil Brother. And let me just say this real quick. If you were like me, you hated Lil Brother because they took a spot, like, and not only took it well, and not took it because they were first to get to it or market it. No, they were better than you. This is one thing I need to tell all the people of my time period. Fonte was better than you. Ninth was better. Pooh was better. The collective group of Lil Brother was better. That's why they dominated that space. They were better performers. They were better at making songs. They were better rhymers. They were better overall in that. So I call this like kind of the Little Brother era, right? The OK Player, Message Board, Little Brother era, right? But there was a lot of dope stuff coming out, right? Like, Superstition. You know what I'm saying? Of course, the low budget team was coming out with dope music, right? Like, all of these crews that I'm going to miss if I just start trying to name everybody.
Right.
But when that 20-year-old that you're talking about starts playing music, he stops at 96, 98. And I'm like, dude, do you know how much dope stuff came out between now and then that ties into what you're playing now? But there was this sort of and I don't mean to I don't want to turn this into a negative conversation, but it's sort of a documentary of my personal relationship with it, right? There was sort of this we're not going to go past Mos Def. Like vibe amongst DJs. All right, fine. Mos Def, Common, that was it. Anything. And then Dilla became a thing, and it was like, okay, fine. Only Dilla.
Right.
And then everything 90, 96 and before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Before Dilla and after Dilla.
Right. So I think so much. Leave Trek Life out of it, right? You got to play more records. So much was missed and lost in a time period where you could play anything. People were just not trying to play anything. It just got to a point where they just weren't going to play anything.
No,
right?
and I know this about you, because if it wasn't for you, I would be neck deep in that group of people, for sure. Even though I had a radio show during that whole period of time, it's like I was listening to a lot of it. I was like, and then things that stood out, but a lot of it was like, you know, and that's why I can't blame whatever music is coming out now for me losing interest in anything, because I think I was already starting to kind of approach that point where I was like, I have my favorite records. Maybe those will continue to be my favorite records. And maybe I have a big enough ego that I don't care, even though I probably should. And if not for your voice in my ear saying, dude, what, did you not listen to this? Did you not listen to this new Elzai record?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have. I might not have. And that, probably wouldn't have.
But that's the key, right? Like, how did we miss? Because we missed.
Oh, yeah.
Elzai. We missed Elzai. Like, Elzai did not end up where he should have ended up. And people could argue where that should have been or whatever. But I'm saying, like, how did we miss Well, we missed Elzai because we had gotten to this point where we were like, we're not doing it anymore. Like, we're not doing it. No more people are coming through. Like, we're done. DJs were like, yo, we're done. I still hold a grudge against the DJ community for that. You know what I'm saying? You have your DJs like Rhythmatic, and of course, I mean, I could name plenty of DJs that didn't, but I have a personal, like that Soul Assassins collective record that Muggs did. Mm-hmm. People weren't playing songs off of that. I'm like, how are you not? The record was crazy. It just like I said, it got to a point where it just seemed like people were just going to refuse. We refuse to play anything beyond this cutoff point, unless it's regional. So if I'm in the Bay, then I'm still going to play Zion I. I'm still going to play, the Bay had a big love with Quasimodo overall, right? I'm still going to play, of course, Hyro or whatever, right? If I'm in LA, then, rest in peace, that's one. I'm still going to play People Under the Stairs. I'm still going to play, maybe some Eminem records on occasion, right? Like Blue. There was what I called it, a lot of people had a Shiny Suits era. I call it the colorful tennis shoes era, when Pac Div and Blue, and it was like, oh, this is the colorful tennis shoes era. Like people still weren't playing they were going to their shows. Mm-hmm. They were talking about them, but nobody was playing their records. Mm-hmm. When you got into a spot, let's say you went to like I don't know, man, like Star Shoes, where you could play anything you wanted, I wouldn't hear Pac Div. Like, why am I not hearing Pac Div?
Did that have something to do with the decline of radio? Like the decline of shows like The Joint and The Wake Up Show, and not
possibly
that I'm saying it declined at that moment, but it was just like you could get your music from other places, so like you had to listen to The Wake Up Show to hear the music back in the day. True. You could have done it, but absolutely could have done it.
You could though, right?
Yeah, but that the experience was like, there are very few DJs who break records still. I mean, there were always few DJs who broke records relative to the total wider community of DJs, right? Mm-hmm. I would like to believe that at least for I did the radio show for 20 years. I will only be so bold as to say that I would like to think that at least for a small chunk of that 20-year period, or chunks along the way, I broke a couple of records to the people who were listening to the show.
Sure.
And that's not a great, I don't think it would be a triple A batting average. That's the very best I could hope for. Most DJs don't break records.
No.
Right? Mm-mm. Because breaking records involves some courage, and some conviction, and some confidence to play something that, that, you know, which we've talked about in other contexts before. But now everybody's their own DJ as well. So the challenge of that, that bar has gotten higher as well. And where we talked about the bar for MCs, for groups of rappers and collectives and producers in that 90s era was always like, oh no, why would we do that? Compared to this that we love, that record we just did sucks.
Right.
Right? DJs as a community, in my opinion, didn't act that way. Didn't conduct themselves or look at the craft in that way in terms of breaking records. Because also a lot of DJs just, you know, want to scratch better than so-and-so or cut better than so-and-so or battle or whatever. And the battle the battle can only exist in the battle environment. The cuts and the scratches and the juggles and this and that. Whereas if you look at the guys who are really great at that, like Shortcut, Repmatic, D Styles, right? Mm-hmm. X-Men.
D Styles is amazing, yo.
Pickles. Those guys are also really, really good at being A&R, guys. Breaking records, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't always love it, but you're always going to hear something that you don't. J-Rock is a prime example.
Epitome of that. Yeah.
So that's something that I definitely think has started to become missing or unappreciated.
I think it's gone, and I mean no, it's gone, yo. And I play a like I said, Snapback's old school hip hop. Whenever I DJ, like I said, the record that people react to.
Yep.
Because put it this way, so much music has been ultimately denied that you could break a 20-year-old record right now.
That's yeah. Let me ask you something.
You could literally
I know you're going to talk about consequence.
I was going to say that, right?
Let me ask you a real controversial question.
Sure.
I have always loved Black Thought.
Yeah.
Black Thought is probably in a lot of people's top 50 lists.
Sure. Absolutely.
Unshockingly would probably be in a lot of people's top 2015 lists even. Right?
Should be. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that his ranking, whatever ranking he holds in a particular person's list today, would be the same if not for Jimmy Fallon?
No.
Which is crazy.
It's insane. I mean, amongst us,
yeah,
of course it would.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, no. And God, this is going to sound so whack. Like, don't y'all just let me finish before y'all throw stones at me. The early Roots records, I can phrase this to where y'all not going to throw stones at me. He was an extended instrument. Mm. Like the Black Thought that we hear now is not necessarily the Black Thought we heard on Organics and Do You Want More, right? He was dope, absolutely dope, no doubt. But I feel like it was this Illadelph Half-Life where we start to go, yo, right? Where, and I'm an MC wholeheartedly. I could tell you how to do this, and when I can listen to a verse and go, oh yeah, he wrote that. Like he didn't feel like being on this song. Like I could tell you immediately when I hear a verse, right? And I'm not saying that about Black Thought in the Roots. I'm saying he was writing to not outdo the music.
To be
he
part
was
of the
trying
band.
to stay in pocket. Yeah, to be part of the band. He was trying to stay in pocket. Illadelph Half-Life and Beyond was when the pen just started getting wilder and wilder and wilder every record. And he would write records like You Got Me or whatever just to sort of keep people in check, which is also sort of like why he's one of the best, if not the best ever, is because he still did know how to write a song that would capture the masses, or at least have a net for the masses. But then he's just going off naming authors you ain't never heard of and rhyming them with words you forgot you knew. So I say that to say that where we ranked him early on, which was not in the top 5, top 10, top 15, was fair because he was an extended instrument deliberately. That's what made him good. But after Illadelph Half-Life and going forward, you start to go, okay. And once he started doing his solo stuff, then it was like, all right, it's over. He got it.
And that's the thing, it has nothing to do with Fallon, but to have that platform to be I assume much more comfortable in being able to have a enjoyable life without having to be in a tour bus or two tour buses all the time, right?
Yeah.
It helps. You know what I mean?
It does.
And that's what having conversations like this where we talk, whether you're talking about a top 10 or whatever you list or your favorites and stuff like that, it's like, I know when I'm in the right room to have that conversation because I could say DLC and everyone will be quiet and say like, okay, yeah. Or say, okay, well, yeah, you said Grandmaster Caz and you said Biggie and you said Jay and you said Nas, and you said Snoop. But what about Monch and Poe?
Well, yes. But if you stop me, if you say, yo, Trek, name them off. Like for me, you know what I mean? Name them off. I'm like Black Thought, Pharoah Monch, Elzar.
Okay.
Right? Mos Def, Ice Cube, Big Daddy Kane, Rakim. I'm not naming them in order.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm just naming them off. Right? AC Alone, Blue, Mike Nine. Like, the way that I describe rap, and I'm not, this is going to sound like such a diss. Some people enjoy Dr. Seuss. Cat in a Hat is fine. Other people need and prefer a little more creative, not creative because that's wrong. Dr. Seuss is very creative, but a little deeper reading, right? Rap music gives something for everybody. I mean, we spend a lot of time mad at it for whatever reason and mad at people for liking different things, which, again, you ain't even got to know. So much music out, so much access that you could be listening to the same Spotify as me and we never cross paths musically. Right?
Right.
But in the end, because we made it through that era, or we were in that era, in that mindset, within that Alcoholics, Far Side, Freestyle Fellowship, Tribe, De La, da-da-da, the MCs that we're looking for are on different tones. I can appreciate some MCs. Definitely not like a Nelly, but like somewhere above that. But I mean, I could even appreciate Nelly. Like, I could appreciate what he wasn't attempting to accomplish. I wasn't his target audience. He reached his target audience perfectly. You know what I'm saying? I just don't like the music, right? I can live with that. What I'm getting at is, you said you would say Monch. Like, people would have to, even if people that are diehard Tupac fans, for example, will go, yeah, nah, man, Monch, absolutely.
Right.
Corrupt, absolutely. Like, nobody's going to, people with common sense are not going to be like, Monch, what? Right. You know,
Right.
we're all smarter than that in this era. Now, post us, Like some of the way I see some of the younger people talk, like it gets a little stupid. Like it's message board nonsense. Like it's starting to be contrarian or whatever. Like we're starting to mess around and pretend like people like Monch aren't, or OC or whomever weren't dope. Now we're playing this little game.
Right.
But the non-goofy listener, whether they were into the Chronic and West Side Connection or not, if you said Monch, they would be like, yeah. What are you talking about? Yes, Monch.
That's very important what you just said, because I would hazard a guess that nobody is going to forget Biggie. I know nobody's going to forget Pac. It's not possible.
No.
It has to take something very dramatic and destructive for the public to forget those people.
Sure.
But you can see a world in which a lot of people don't know about Monch. Who should,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
Who don't understand how important Master Ace is.
Master Ace, Redman.
Red? Are you kidding me? Absolutely.
Yeah. Sure.
You know.
I mean, crews we named earlier. The Alcoholics.
Yeah.
King T. These people are gonna go on to be, you know, I don't want to say but will likely in popular circles be largely forgotten.
And that's why it's important to talk about it and not it's like your top 10 is your top 10. Great. Mm-hmm. Mine is mine. I don't care if Complex can have their own. HipHop DX can have their own. Whatever. Rolling Stone can have their own. I don't have to agree with it. But if we don't talk about those artists, who aren't on all of those lists at the same time in the top 5, it's like, then what are we even doing? How can we complain about whatever kids think, younger people think about the music?
I'm trying to say this and I don't want to hear nothing else about it. No, I'm going to say this right now. From a mainstream perspective, I'm talking strictly from a mainstream rapper, like a quality mainstream rapper. If Drake didn't have ghostwriters, he would be the best mainstream rapper of this time period. Point blank. Right? He'd be one of the few outside of, I can't remember the dude's name is failing me, dude from Detroit. Detroit by way of LA. But there was kind of a brief moment where the mainstream rappers were also super making effort to be dope. You know what I'm saying? Hold on, I'm trying to. Big Sean. Like, I remember that kind of brief when my daughter was very young. She wasn't listening to this stuff just yet, but my niece was really into Big Sean, and I was like, yeah, like, it's not for me. Like, but I can see that the dude is trying to rap. Mm-hmm. Like, not trying, like, not accomplishing, but he is attempting to maintain some form of clever, not just 1-2 buckle my shoe, right? Mm-hmm. Where does that debate happen but within people who care about the quality of the music? You're not even going to begin to have that conversation unless you care about the quality. And we're talking about hip hop's 50th anniversary, and the main representation is, of course, rap. There's so much more to hip hop, right? But just the outward most popular representation of the music, of the culture, has been rap music. And within that, you don't even have those arguments unless you care. And I think that that's the thing about our era. We cared. We actually cared. Like, I'm sitting here going, that Mac 10 and Manny Fresh record was crazy. And I got homeboys just like, you listen to that? I'm like, are you kidding me? That record was crazy. But we cared. We cared about whether it was dope beyond who did it. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's ultimately what was lost. Is that who did it becomes, more important than.
And I'm not sure. Maybe the new metric for success or likability is just the vibe of it. And that's kind of, I think it's got to be an oversimplification, but that's the sense that I get sometimes, like we walked into the venue the other night and nobody was even DJing yet. There were, by the way, a couple of younger cats DJing that were dope. There were, gave me that feeling of like, okay, well, you have, you know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But we walked in, they were just playing music off of a phone or something. And, first thing I heard, walked in and the Nonce mixtape dropped. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh. You know what I mean?
I mean, can you remember when you heard World Ultimate?
Crazy.
I mean, aside from mixtapes and bus stops, I had bus stops on vinyl. I just remember World Ultimate and being like, yo. It was such an insane era. Haiku to Ta wasn't like, I'm like a little bit later on in the era, right? I just got his name escapes me, but other artists from Project Blow were starting to come out. Abstract Rude. And I just remember being like, yo, no one's ever gonna rap this good again. You know what I'm saying? And then you'd hear Pep Love and go, God, no one else is ever going to rap this good again, right? And then Pharaoh Martin is like, no one else is. It just kept being mind-blowingly dope every time you heard it.
Yesterday, I listened to That's When You Lost actually not, I've listened to it recently, so I can't say for the first time in a long time. But I had never looked at the lyrics. So it was on, it was on Genius, so I pulled it up because I never thought about who was who. I could kind of tell, but I never really thought about it, right? Mm-hmm. It's just one of my favorite records of all time. Right down to the blue vinyl, like the whole 9 yards, right? And I'm going through it and I'm like, oh my God, Pep Love completely destroyed all of the best MCs on the West Coast on a record that's not even his record.
Not even his record, yo.
I'm like, oh my goodness.
Nah, the one that still, and we got to close out, man, because we over time. But to this day, on occasion, I'll turn on That's How It Is or Casual and just go. I'll never, and okay, I keep saying I'll never forget, but I really won't, man. Like, I remember when they used to do that on Rap City and Yo MTV Raps, where they'd play a new song, but it would be at the last minute when they had to go to the next show. So it would be like only a third of this, like it wouldn't even get all the way through the first verse, and you was like, what? What just happened right now? What the hell was that? You know what I'm saying? And you couldn't find it yet because that was when records were being, videos were being put out before songs were available. Like back when there was some hype to a record. Like now, I dare you to put out a song before it's available. Like you not selling no records. Like people ain't streaming nothing. If I can't go get it right now, I'm not listening to it. But I remember when this motherfucker said, "You bitch so hard, I thought the shit was a quote." I just was like, again, dude, no one's gonna rap better than this. Okay, this is the pinnacle. It's over now. You know what I mean? And that record is still one of the lyrically, style, and just simply stepping on your forehead is still one of the best records ever, hands down. Any era, any region, any city, any state, any small town, I don't care. That record is crazy.
It's
you know what I'm saying?
Unreal.
Casual was a nut on that record.
They were all I watched a video recently of sort of a quasi documentary about the Hobo Junction battle.
Yeah.
And back then it was just, like everyone was just hype, right? legendary, mythical almost, right?
Wait, were you there for that? Were you?
No.
Wasn't that?
No.
Oh, okay.
I think that was
after y'all show, right?
That was up in the Bay, I think.
Oh, it happened in the Bay. That's
think
right. It did
in
happen in the Bay. No, you're right.
But we knew about it. But now, whatever it is, 20 years looking back at it, I'm sitting there going, dude, that's like you're looking at, not that they're children, but it's like looking at two of your children fighting each other and saying, one of you is going to hurt, is going to walk away damaged. And I don't want that. Either one of you, we can't spare either one of you. So cut it out. Just take that somewhere else. Go throw PM Dawn off the stage or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Like somebody go get Nelly, sacrifice Nelly. It's going to get back to him one day and it's going to be so bad.
Yeah. It's not going to be good.
It's not. Because the St. Lunatics themselves were dope. So if they get mad, like just know, I thought you guys were dope. I thought that they did you wrong, what you call it, Murphy Lee wrong by giving him a song with a hook called What the Hook Gonna Be. With all these hit songwriters around, What the Hook Gonna Be is the hook. I thought that was terrible, but aside from that, St. Lunatics is actually dope. Nah, that was supposed to be the end. Hyro was supposed to be done. Like, I mean, listen, come on. We could say it, right? Because it didn't happen. But allegedly, that was the death of Hyro. Oh. And then they came back with Hyro Imperium and the whole... And next thing you know, they throwing their own festival. Mm-hmm. They got one of the best underground records of, I would say, of all time. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
They came back stronger than anybody has ever come back from. NWA never came back from No Vaseline. Never made it back. Dre made it back. Right? Easy and Ren, even though Shock of the Hour was a good record, they never made it back. Cube officially altered their careers in another direction. My man Rick Knight would argue, but 100 Miles of Running was a platinum. Like,
why you gotta make him sound
whatever? Like because that's what it sounds. But 100 Miles of Running was all right. Talk about it, but they never made it back. Hyro made it back fiercely, and is now on a 30-year tour. 50 cities or some 100 cities, whatever they're doing.
God bless them all, man. I hope Saphir's doing okay. Shout to the Who Riders. Man, it's crazy. Man. But that's actually a great what you just said was a great case for No Vaseline being the best diss record of all time. Because the no comeback aspect of that
could not. It was over. It was over. I'll never have dinner with the president. It was over. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Absolutely. He called him rest in peace, a half pint bitch. I mean, y'all might not think that's dope, but in the context of the record, No Vaseline is the greatest. I don't care about Ether. I don't care about none of that. No Vaseline is the greatest diss record of all time because there was no coming back from it. They had to change their entire careers. It was over.
Crazy.
Anyway, yo, man, we've gone overtime for real. Great conversation, though, man.
Yeah, I finally figured out how long my wireless headphones will last.
Yeah, I heard my echo in there. Thank you for tuning in, man. This has been Rap 6 Radio. I am your homeboy, Trek Life. That dude over there, that's your fam, Kev Sakota.
That's right. Happy birthday, everybody.
Happy birthday to hip-hop. Happy birthday to you. We'll catch y'all next week, man. We out of here like last year. Catch us on rap6radio.com for all past episodes or any of your favorite podcasting platforms. Rap6 Radio, at Rap6 Radio on Instagram and RSR Podcast on Facebook. We out of here like last year on the count of three. We say peace. 1, 2, 3.
Peace is the word to play.